Alright, this is as good as time as any to show a little update here. So as you can see, I've got the pathing mostly working. I've just got it on a repeat right now, and it's just kind of testing, make sure that it's always making its right turns. Right now, it's not being, none of these sensors are applying, and we'll get into that in a second, but right now it's just kind of going between the left and right path. And you can see, in addition to there being this hole here right at the entrance, there's one here, and it's never turning into these. It's got the turn detection, which I actually managed to make fit without the use of an EC block. I thought I was going to need to use 2 EC blocks to do that, but I actually was able to do it entirely in sensor logic, which is pretty nice. But if we actually stop this, I think it's coming on down this one next. If we turn this sensor on, yeah, it's coming this way. You'll see this sensor will force it to turn right into here instead of turning left into here like it would be. And basically that's happening just by these sensors. They send a action block relay signal to all the Lemmiwinks, and that's the problem. So right now, basically whenever this triggers, it's sending an action block signal to invert the default turn. The problem is that action block signal is the same for all the Lemmiwinks, so if there's one that's already in the corridors, it gets changed as well. And this does, like, it turns it, it inverts it, and then it inverts it back, so it should reset. But the problem is whenever it's welding, and another one, say it's like half welded here, and another one hits this sensor, it now completely screws up that welding one. So the only way to have these sensors and action blocks work is either by like isolating the antenna grids, which requires putting these sensor blocks on separate grids, which I don't like. I want it to be weldable. And the other thing is to set our channels on Lemmiwinks as it's welded and only have like a maximum of say 4 or 8 Lemmiwinks in a system at once, so that it can always talk to each specific Lemmiwinks and not interfere with the other ones. But I don't know about that one yet. But I can kind of show you the changes. So originally I thought I was going to have to use these ECs. I didn't have to use them. I was able to pretty simply just actually edit in here, basically turning off the ECs, only turning them on when the sensor block sees a block. So I was able to get that turn detection working really well. I've got an extra AR here that I use for the invert turn, and then there's also turn left and turn right. So you can actually, you know, instead of just telling it to invert the turn, you could tell it specifically to turn right. There's also one in here for forward and reverse. And the thing with forward and reverse is I can't have that defined go forward and a defined go backwards, because the way, if we look at it here, forward and oh, I think this is split. If we look here, basically it has to do these invert steerings on offs, and there's no way to set like invert steering on, right? You can't just go here and go invert steering, where is it, invert steering on. It's only on off, so it has to be this kind of swap back. So there's no real way to separate it without either using additional blocks, like any perhaps I could use this EC block to separate it, and a sensor, to isolate it into a proper toggle instead of an inversion. But I don't know if that's really necessary, because it can only move 2 directions. I don't know. We'll see. But that's pretty much all the changes I had to make to this. I don't think there's anything too crazy there. Getting dark. This is working pretty good. I've got this layout slightly changed. I added some backing blocks there. I also raised the ceiling up a tiny bit. So I raised it up to the same level as all these plates around it. Generally this doesn't make a difference, a plate, but this just kind of helped me ensure that once it's printed, it's not triggering random sensors and then having to like crank back and forth to correct before this turn. So this works out good. Basically these blocks are just triggering the sensors. Yeah. I still, like I say, I still haven't decided what is the best course of action. Let's see what we can do with this turn as well. I'm really not sure what the best course of action is. I think keying it so that there's only, you know, each Lemmiwinks gets assigned its own channel for the options. See, that was I think that actually just did what something I've been seeing happen every once in a while is sometimes, particularly with these sensors, they seem to take a second, and like the action relays take a second to, you know, transmit, I guess. So sometimes they actually lose the turning information for the immediate turn following a sensor if it is specifically one block gapped. See how it's still going straight? It still gets through, but it's still going straight. It doesn't do that when there's not a block between the turn and this, and it doesn't do it if there's 2 blocks between the turn and the sensor. It's only when it's 1 block, because it's just that perfect time where this has enough time to trigger on Lemmiwinks, which causes the sensors to update, which causes it to automatically straighten in the tunnel. So it kind of has to do a straight turn, which it doesn't like to do, and it only works on certain orientation. So I gotta kind of figure a fix to that, but getting there. See, it's doing it pretty reliably there. What if we change it? We'll do it over on this one, and we'll see that it'll turn just fine here, even though the turn is closer. So I'm not sure what the best fix for that is yet. It seems to be a limitation of just how fast action relays can activate. It's also not an issue if, so like right now these sensors are set up to, they send the invert signal and then they send it again when there's nothing detected, so that it re-inverts back to the default. If you don't have that second reinvert, then it can make this turn no problem. So if we go here, and we take out this, right, now we can print and it's going to be able to do this turn just fine. Let's see, turns just fine, and that's because it's just the sequencing. Like when it's seeing this, turn on sensor view so it's easier to see. Basically, when Lemulynx gets here, it's almost all the way to this turn already by the time the end of it disconnects from the sensor range. So when the sensors update, it automatically goes forward. Could sneeze. But yeah, that's where it is now. I'm not sure the best course to fix this is, or course around these sensors is, or if there's maybe there's a better way to do it. I also thought about maybe using like a sensor on Lemulynx or something that's looking for, say, small grids, and then you could at the turns just come in, you know, drop a small grid landing plate. Excuse me. A small grid landing plate or whatever, so the sensor would pick that up and be like, oh hey, I see a small grid here, so that means it's a turn. But that requires manual player intervention, so I don't really like that idea. So if you've got an idea for a better way to manage this, or maybe a way to isolate the signals. One of the problems is, to isolate it, it's going to require like a shit ton of timer blocks and just some tedious programming, but it could work. The only downside is like that does put a theoretical maximum on the amount of carts in the system based on how much effort I want to make to include different channels. And then it makes it a little harder because how do you know what cart is coming at what intersection, right? So I don't know.